In SYSC 2006, we have an assignment to program the game of Battleship. I'm going to explain the problem solution behind it and some initial steps towards creating your solution. Now, one thing important here, the intent of the assignment is to exercise two-dimensional arrays. In particular, at this point, we do not know anything about structures. We can easily adapt the suggested data structures that I'm going to show you into structures, but at this time, again, the priority is to exercise two-dimensional arrays. Now, over here on the left-hand side, I've got an image from the web of the game Battleship. We are going to write a program for one player playing against the computer. So as a user, we're going to see this version of the board. We're only going to see our hits and our misses, and we won't know where the boats are actually located. Over here, this represents the computer's solution. I'm going to look over here, and this would represent what the computer is storing. So in essence, this is the displayed version of the board, and if this was hidden over there, this is the hidden solution. Over here, I've prepared data structures. This data structure is going to represent the board as seen by the user. So it's going to be a two-dimensional array. This board over here is going to represent the answer. So I'm going to call it the answer, and it's also going to be a two-dimensional array. Now this is what's seen. When a square is empty, we're going to put just the period character. When the view of the user. The next part is to figure out what's inside of our array. In the board, we want to represent either that we haven't guessed this board, so it's unknown, and we're going to represent that by a dot. So initially we're going to put it in a dot. Later on, how about we represent them as characters? So white or character W for a miss, and red or character R for a hit. How about we say that this is going to be a char array? On this side here, what we want to do is represent the hidden solution over here. So it's going to be either empty, or it's going to contain boat number 1 or boat number 2 or boat number 3. To start off, just as we've used a smaller board, we're also going to have smaller number of boats. We're going to have boat number 1 here, and then we're going to have boat number 1. So that boat's going to be 2 spaces long, and then we're going to have boat number 2 here, and it's going to be arranged vertically, and let's say it's got a length of 3. That begs, what are we going to put inside of here? So I suggest that to represent an empty space, how about we put -1, and then that should be leading you to the idea that this two-dimensional array is going to be an integer. So we're going to have, on this one here, we're going to have characters, so that's going to make it easy to display and print out. Okay? So over here, I'm going to have initially, we could print out spaces, but when we print it out, we kind of want to know that there's something there. So all these dots will help us represent that right now we are starting out on our game and we haven't guessed anything. Over here, what we are going to do is we're going to initialize everything to -1, except for those places where we randomly put boats. So there's going to be, during the initialization, we're going to have to put random generation that's going to put our boats at a certain location and in a certain direction. But this is how we're going to start off now with our initial board. I've got another two-dimensional array. Now, what am I going to be using that for? Well, let's run through a scenario. Suppose as a user, I want to select a particular location. From the user's point of view, just like in Battleship, we're going to call this one A, we're going to call this one B, we're going to call this one C. And across the top, to label the rows, we're going to call this one 1, we're going to call this one 2, this one 3, and the final one we're going to call 4. Suppose the user guesses A1. The computer is going to go over here and we have to translate A1 into array coordinates. And the array coordinates over on this side are going to be typical array coordinates of 0, 1, and 2. And along the horizontal is also going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Let's fix up this. There's a little bit of math. Now, at this point, I see that it's empty. Over here, I want to then print out that I have a miss. So I'm going to print out a white character, and that represents, just like over here on the game, we now have a white peg there. The next round, the user guesses this square, so that's B3. When we look over here on B3, we see, oh, there's a boat there. We're going to put over here, we're going to put a character R for red so that the user sees that. But we also need to record as part of the game logic that boat number 1 has been hit. And that's what this data structure is going to be over here. This data structure is going to represent each boat. This is going to represent boat 0, and this one will represent boat 1. Boat 1. In the horizontal direction, this column is going to represent the length, and in this column is going to represent the number of hits. We have boat 0 and boat 1. The boat 0 and 1 are going to make good array indices. So what I'm going to suggest then is, instead of 1 and 2, that we use the array indices of 0, and this will be 0, and this will be 1, and this will be 1 and 1. And that will correspond to boat 0 and 1. Boat 0 has a length of 2, so we're going to initialize it over here to a length of 2. Boat 1 has a length of 3. Initially, they have 0 hits. Again, that's part of our initialization. Because we now, through our guess in this scenario, we now have a hit, what we're going to do is we're going to cross that out, we're going to update it, and we're going to increment the number of hits. Have I hit a whole boat? What do I need to do is I need to compare the number of hits to the length. If those two variables match, then I know I've hit the whole boat. To find out whether or not I've won the game, the number of hits for each boat has to be equal to the number of length. Now, this is the background on which we can build a program. It's not the only one. You can come up with your own solution, but given the stage and knowledge of students in the class at this point, with the focus on this assignment on two-dimensional arrays, this is one that I'm suggesting. So at this point here, I've got a program over here that represents this. You'll see that I have a number of defines up here, and in the first defines, I've defined a set of characters. I've got the dot character, the little W character, the little R character, and then I've also got a capital R. So that when I have sunk all the boats, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the little r, and I'm going to change it into, if I've hit it, I'm going to change it into a capital R so that people know that I've hit the whole boat. These defines represent characteristics of the other two arrays. The empty marks is used to identify empty slots, And then these two are used to represent the two aspects, the two dimensions along the columns. So this represents the size. I should rename this length to size of the boat, and then number of hits. In my program here, I've used some variables because I plan to change the dimensions of my game as time goes on. And you can see that I've defined a board, which is a two-dimensional array, rows and columns of characters. I've also defined another two-dimensional array called answer, and it's of type integers. Because they're the same dimensions, I've used a single nested looping structure to initialize the display to all unknown characters, and I've initialized the answer to be all initially empty. I'm then preparing my boats array, and inside of here I've got two boats, and for each boat what I've done is initialize its size and the number of hits to 0. That is how I've started my program. Suppose the first thing that I want to do is I want to be able to print out my arrays. So I'm going to now copy paste this code. And I'm going to, inside of here, instead of initializing it, what I'm going to do is print the current contents. I'm going to first print the board. So over here I'm going to print the board, and that's %C, and then I'm going to print board at the current row and the current column. Then what I'll do is I'll copy paste that, and instead of printing out the current board, I'll print out the answer. Now notice right now I don't have any boats. Why would I bother doing this? I just want to get something on the screen, and then I can start adding in my facilities. So let's compile that. Hopefully I've done okay. And then what I do is run it. And you can see, oh, look at, I've got ... -1. It's all empty, both in the display and in the answer. Now, of course, that's not very pretty. I've given you a start, finish it off. In doing so, please remember to use good notation, choose meaningful, readable variable names, use good indentation, and hopefully you even find places where you want to create inside of functions. Good luck!